June 2025. 8021 had been the last bus to serve 165th Street Terminal, doing so on the Q2. The first trips to the new interim 168th Street Terminal took place. This terminal is expected to be used for a minimum of 2 years, up until 2027, when the repairs at 165th Street Terminal are done and the terminal may reopen to the public. The first bus to ever use the new 168th Street Terminal was LFS 8499 on the Q36. The following runs also took place into this new terminal. This terminal had been in the planning for many years, so it was very exciting to see it finally open. On June 2nd, 2025, a TransLink LFS CNG 25183 was sent to Zerega for inspection. Kingsbridge continued to receive a flurry of loans from other MaBSTOA depots. While they did receive a bunch of Arctic loans from West Farms and Gun Hill, they are not covered in this video. The loans that they received from Manhattan range from NextGens to XDE40s and some LFS HEVs, listed here. Adding to the fun, Gun Hill also got involved in the loaning madness. They received a mixture of NextGens and XDE40s, listed here. 6162 also went to Gun Hill. They received 9780 and 83 from Manhattanville as permanent transfers on June 23rd, which sent 9708 and 9771 back to Manhattanville. Flatbush also gave them an extra LFSA 5485. Let me clarify with 9708. It was supposed to be a Manhattanville base unit, but Gun Hill took it for themselves back in 2022. That's right, we didn't forget. West Farms received some very cool loans and transfers throughout June. Some of these were used to bolster the fleet, while others were used to help more C40LFs go to Queens, in order to help them with the Queens Bus Redesign. Here were some of the loans which West Farms received, with the notable ones of course being the NextGens 4359, 4692, 94, and 99. This occurrence would again repeat itself throughout July and August. They also got 2015 XD40s and 2019 LFSs as permanent transfers. They got XD40 7370 to 7373 from Stengel, 7570 to 7571 from Jamaica, and LFSs 8639 to 8645 from Queens Village. Official units. Holy smokes! For a man who was mentally checked out of MTA moves at the time, this stuff came as a deep surprise to see in person. C40LFs 337 to 345 were transferred from West Farms to College Point from June 19th to the 24th, along with C40LF 238 from Jackie Gleason, while 346 to 350 were sent from West Farms to Spring Creek around June 18th to 19th to facilitate a service boost on the B103. A lot more flexibility exists between MTA Bus and New York City Transit now. Here is the current distribution of LFS HEVs 9620 to 9639, which are all supposed to be Tuskegee units, after several units spent time at Manhattanville. We are still retaining 6 of Tuskegee's 9600 series HEVs. For what reason, I don't know. Maybe we gotta be the kingpin. I don't consent to it, but I will tolerate it. Michael J. Quill was also in on the action. They received several loans as well, including NextGens 4359 and 4675. At this point, Manhattanville NextGens had essentially become a fleet in rotation for MaBSTOA depots. Mother Claire Hale received Arctic loans from Kingsbridge, who frankly was in no position to give them. They themselves were receiving loans. Why would you give some to Hale? Several 2012 XD60s were sent from Grand Avenue to Casey Stengel to help them out with the Queens Bus Redesign service boosts, namely 4725, 4737-39, and 4742. In late May and early June, a dumbass series of events which I now call the Great Clusterfuck took place. It started around May 22nd. Here's what happened. There were a lot of LFS shifts from Staten Island to the Bronx and Queens, and in exchange, Queens and the Bronx would shift some of their LFSs to Staten Island. It was a mess. Just look at this. This is insane. I hope I put this on the Discord by the time this video comes out, because that way you'll be able to see all the depot madness which took place. The first transfer units from Queens to Staten Island, 83, 34, and 36, re-debuted on the S93 on May 30th, along with 8363, a former Bronx bus, on the S78. Meanwhile, the first ex-Staten Island bus, 8158, ran on the BX10 out of Kingsbridge on June 13th. Here's where stuff got crazier. DOB's crazy ass decided to send two XD40s, 7628 and 7631, from Flatbush to Charleston on June 22nd, which debuted on the S78 and S55 respectively. First time Staten Island has used XD40s in 14 years. 7650 was later sent to Charleston as well, debuting on the S78 on July 3rd. By this point, Charleston was the Xcelsior hub for Staten Island, and Castleton's time of being the only depot with third gens in service was quickly coming to an end. In exchange, Castleton sent third gen 7028 and 7038 to Flatbush, which entered service later in July. 7028 had been testing around Flatbush on June 24th. As a heads up, Flatbush Depot later got more third gens from Castleton in July. Manhattanville later got some third gens for maintenance. As of the time of me recording this, we do not yet know if they are going to use any of them for service. Spring Creek received ex-New Jersey Transit MCI 2198 on June 25th. At the time, they had 6 ex-NJT units, 2197 to 2200, 2204, and 2206. Castleton had received several ex-NJT MCIs from February to June as gap fillers until newer equipment immediately arrived. They received 5 units, 2195 to 96, 2201, 05, and 09. 2201 spent a day at Charleston on March 8th. Keep in mind that as a fleet, Castleton only had the ex-NJT units for a very brief while, kind of like a Lithiums at Hale or Orion 5s at West Farms kind of situation. 2195, 2201, and 2209 later transferred from Castleton to Spring Creek, which bumped their total up to 8 ex-NJT MCIs listed here. So at this point, they essentially have half of the ex-NJT fleet, while 2196 and 2205 went to Queens Village. This all took place during July. As for the 4 native D4500CT units at Castleton, 2217, 23-24, and 2228 went to Queens Village. 2196 and 2223 did take trips to College Point, but they were not for keepers there. 2195 was the last official MCI at Castleton, which left on July 25th, ending its MCI era for good, from 1997 to 2025. 2195 also visited JFK on July 3rd. It's crazy how Castleton's last unit wasn't even native. Kind of like the JFK 2010 Next Gen situation, but I'm jumping the gun. As for the other units, 2202 had received a repaint as Zerega on April 2nd. 2208 was sent from Eastchester Scrap Storage to Zerega on March 26th, then repainted on June 2nd. Both of those units were initially slated to go to Castleton. However, the depot is no longer in need of those units thanks to newer 2025 Prevost arrivals at Castleton. So those units may go elsewhere, maybe Queens Village or Spring Creek, wherever they're needed. And 2203 and 2207 technically don't even exist in that form yet. They still exist as 7110 and 7114, sitting at Eastchester Scrap Storage unrepainted. Initially, I thought they were retired when I made my visit, but that is not the case. However, we gotta ask, will they even be needed at this point? Well, maybe. They can help retire some CLs in the meantime until the option order Prevost arrives. The way that these MCIs were divvied up between MTA Bus and New York City Transit was quite impressive. Then again, MTA Bus and New York City Transit are more integrated than they used to be, in terms of the ease of transferability. The CT transfers from Castleton to Queens Village help bolster the fleet for the Queens Bus Redesign, QM63 to QM68. 2025 Prevost 1630-31, which were at the Prevost facility since February, were redelivered to Zerega on June 20th, 2025, then transferred to College Point on June 24th, then to Yukon on June 26th. For 1630, it was like a return back home, until it got transferred to the NYCT side. 1630 re-entered service on June 27th on the SIM 7, and 1631 entered service on June 26 on the SIM 15, both out of Yukon, kindling the era of the 2025 Prevost officially this time. These units would later end up at Castleton in July. On June 26, it was also revealed that 1632 was built, as Prevost had celebrated their accomplishment of being able to furnish Prevost for MTA Bus and NYCT. Additionally, the option order 131 Prevost got confirmed, but I guess I'll leave that for July's video. Look at this, 1631 even got to run on the S89 in its infancy. XE40s 4974, 5014, and 5018 to 19 were transferred from Grand to East New York. which brought their total to 12 XC40s, listed here. 4976 ran on the B15 on June 5th, as XC40 appearances on East New York routes began to become more frequent. The first known appearance of an XC40 on my former school route, the B25, was done by 4978 on May 22nd. 2025 XC40 5030 also conducted a quick visit to East New York on June 5th. 4965, the pilot unit, was transferred from Quill to Charleston. Here was the distribution of XC40s in June of 2025. Kingsbridge had 4, Grand had 26, Quill had 15, East New York had 12, and Charleston had 4. The ultimate vision of 5 depots having XC40s was beginning to become true, with Grand and Quill no longer being the XC40 kingpins that they used to be in early 2025, as well as late 2024. Casey Stengel received next-gens 4343, 4360, 88, 4401, 30, 4525, 27, 34, and 4545 from JFK, 4507, 4557, and 4566 from LaGuardia, and 4520 and 22 from Baisley Park, and a mass exodus of Orions from MTA Bus. A total of 15 units, increasing their total to a maximum of 55 next-gens and furnishing their fleet for the Queen's Bus Redesign. It was like the last of mankind leaving a dying Earth in search of a habitable planet. These remaining units came in handy to bolster the fleet for Queen's Bus Network redesign route expansion, service boosts, and newly received routes such as the Q58, Q61, Q90, and Q98. It also helped send some 2015 XD40s to West Farms. Meanwhile, several 2017 XD60s were sent from Stengel to Baisley Park as summer loans between June 4th and 6th. The ones I know about are 6035, 39, 85, and 6115. JFK had 9 next-gens from June 1st to June 20th, which lasted through most of June until they were transferred. 4343, 60, 88, 4401, 30, 4525, 27, 34, and 45. Many of them got to run to the new interim 168th Street bus terminal, on routes like the Q6, Q8, and Q9. Between June 20th and 22nd, the 9 remaining units were sent to Stengel to bolster the fleet for the Queen's Bus Redesign, as focus shifted from MTA Bus to New York City Transit for the Orion 7 Next-Gen fleet. But don't worry, you can still see Next-Gens at 168th Street Terminal, just on the Q76. So, the last Far Rockaway Next-Gen to run was 4360, doing so on June 21st on the Q7. The last JFK Next-Gens to run were 4401 and 4545, both running on June 20th. Their last runs took place on the Q37 and Q7. 4343's last run took place on June 19th on the Q6. I could have caught it if I weren't so busy finessing the last couple LaGuardia Next-Gens. Just goes to show you never know when it'll be your last time catching something. Meanwhile, 4430 was the last Next-Gen to be physically present at JFK until June 29th, when it was unretired and sent to Casey Stengel. Once that happened, JFK became the first MTA bus depot to possess a fully blue and gold fleet. It's been 10 years in the making, but has finally come to pass. Congratulations, guys. Here were the last runs of all the JFK Next-Gens in June. Baisley Park had 3 remaining Next-Gen units, 4520, 4522, and 4626. 4520 and 4522 were sent to Casey Stengel on June 21st. Their last remaining unit was 4626, which conducted its last run on June 23rd on the Q110 and Q112. It was also the last MTA bus Next-Gen in service. After a quick non-revenue visit to College Point on June 24th, 4626 was sent to Eastchester scrap on July 3rd. Baisley Park became the second MTA bus depot to have a fully blue and gold fleet, also 10 years in the making. Quite fitting that JFK and Baisley Park, which got this whole blue and gold era started in the first place back in 2016, got to fulfill it together as well in 2025. LaGuardia had 4 Next-Gens left, 4507, 4510, 4557, and 4566, most of which continued to run between June 1st and June 20th. That's when I was told about the situation by a fellow fanner on the parade of trains, namely on the R32, and at the time I was severely out of the loop on the bus side of things due to keeping up with all the foolishness that Schittler and his regime are conducting on the American public. Anyways, 4510 was the first of these next gens to die, with it conducting its last run on June 8th on the Q101 and being retired 3 days later. 4566 last ran on June 16th on the Q100. The last two next gens left at LaGuardia, 4507 and 4557, conducted their last runs on June 20th on the Q102 and Q39 respectively. 4507, 4557, and 4566 were all sent to Casey Stengel the next day to extend the service life of these units for the Queens Bus Redesign. So now Casey Stengel is an Orion hub of sorts. I mean, they have the most next gens out of anyone in the MTA right now. And New York City Transit is the only place where you can find next gens now. Manhattanville, Casey Stengel, East New York, and Flatbush. And when I say Manhattanville, I am including the MaBSTOA Loans, the crazy stuff that happens every other day, with loans to West Farms, Kingsbridge, Gun Hill, Quill, you name it. LaGuardia got XD60-6036 from Stengel on June 6th, and 6170-74 from Flatbush on June 28th, as loans and/or transfers. The Q70 will receive extra service, 18 additional weekday trips. This might have taken place already, so if it did, please let me know. College Point continued to receive more loans, including MCI 4306, which ran on June 16th on the QM2 and BXM9, as well as NextGen 4507. Prevost 1369-74 and 1379-80 were transferred from College Point to JFK Depot for the QM65. At this point, Zerega had 8 NextGen units for training. I had taken a trip to Eastchester Scrap on June 25th to see the retired units in person. This was the first time I had seen the retired 2010 Novas, LaGuardia NextGens. The lot was a lot emptier than I expected. I also saw ex-NJT MCI 7110 and 7114, which are slated to be 2203 and 2207 in the future, just sitting there. I thought they hadn't made it to MTA conversion. Maybe they were defective or something. However, that is not the case. MTA Bus conducted a series of moves between June 19th and 21st, which helped them rid themselves of the remaining next-gens, and allowed them to reallot buses in preparation for the impending Queens Bus Redesign. 9010 to 9011 were shifted from JFK to Baisley Park. 9181 to 9188 and 9312 to 9314 were shifted from JFK to LaGuardia, and 9309 to 9311 were shifted from LaGuardia to Eastchester. The current assignments are Baisley Park with 48 coneheads, 8964 to 9011, that helps them carry the Q51 and Q115. LaGuardia coneheads, 9181 to 9271, 91 units, that helps them carry the Q32. LaGuardia XD40s, 9272 to 9308 and 9312 to 14, still 40 units. And Eastchester XD40s, 9309 to 9311 and 9354 to 9387, which helps them carry overnight Q50 service. 37 XD40s now. June 27, 2025 marked the end of an era for Old Queens as we know it. This was the last day for the Q15A, Q20A and B, Q34 and QM3. The last QM3 trip took place on MCI D4500CL 3328 from 6:05 to 7:25 p.m. The last Q20B trip was conducted by LFS Conehead 8773 in the early morning of June 28. The QM3 lasted from 1970 to 2025. The Q20B lasted from 1999 to 2025. The Q34 lasted from 1933 to 2025. Other relevant final pre-redesign trips are shown here, such as the last X63, 64, and 68, last QM2, QM20, and QM32 trippers out of Eastchester, last Q15A, Q20A and B, last Q26 under Stengel, last Q29 under LaGuardia, last Q32 under Casey Stengel, things of that nature. You can read the list for yourself. And the first Queens Bus Redesign trips are shown here. The first QM63 to 64, first QM65 and 68, first Q14, first Q20, first Q26 and 28 under College Point, first Q32 under LaGuardia, first Q38, 61, first Q98, first Q74 and 75, Q82, first Q86 to Q89, things of that nature. First Q114, it's all there. Here were some notable runs which took place through June. We had some next gens doing some cool stuff, as you can see, running on some rare routes, and we also had a lot of interborough loans and debuts into service. Phase 1 of the Queens Bus Redesign began on June 29th. I covered it extensively in another video. However, here are some corrections from that video. The Q38 is now at Stengel, and the Q72 remains at LaGuardia. The Q19-23 were shifted from College Point to LaGuardia. Some other changes which I feel I should reiterate on are the Q26 and Q28 are now at College Point instead of Stengel. The Q32 left Stengel for LaGuardia. The Q58 left Fresh Pond for Stengel. The Q98 was born into Stengel, or I should say reborn into Stengel, because it used to exist under JFK. The Q38 left College Point for Stengel. The Q64 and Q74 went to College Point, with the Q64 leaving Baisley Park for College Point and the Q74 being born into College Point. Grand relieved LaGuardia of the Q29, Q39, and Q67, and they also intend to extend the B62 into Astoria for Phase 2 of the Queens Bus Redesign, which starts on August 31st. That's also when the Q80 will be created and when the Q21 will die. Q80 is going to JFK, so you'll see XD40s and coneheads on that route, as well as XD60s. KC Stengel is essentially the breadwinner of Queens right now, especially Flushing. Of course, here's where all the new routes went. The Q14 went to Fresh Pond, the Q20, Q38, Q61, Q90, and Q98 went to Stengel, the Q45, Q48, Q75, Q82, QM63 to 64, and QM68 went to Queens Village. The Q86 to 87 and Q89 went to Jamaica. The Q63 and 74 went to College Point. The Q51 and Q115 went to Baisley Park. The Q80 and QM65 went to JFK, although the Q80 is not yet in existence. I think those are pretty much the important points for the Queens Bus Redesign. The Queens Bus Redesign also has a brand new terminal to go along with it, which I feel is very fitting. On the same day the Queens Bus Redesign took effect, service enhancements also kicked in for 26 selected bus routes listed here. So they basically improved service for around 3 to 5 routes per borough, not including the Queens Bus Redesign service enhancements. And some articles where you can read about the changes are in the description and in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching the June update. Hope you enjoyed. Prepare yourself for the July one, because that's going to be a freaking mess. As they call it, the DOB money moves. As I call it, the Great Clusterfuck. Oh, it's going to be bad. Enjoy!